The inner clock describes these tiny timekeepers that fill our body. Essentially, every cell in your body has a clock. And these clocks coordinate all the systems of the body to coordinate together to ensure you do the right things at the right time. So whether that's sleeping, ideally eating, when you max in strength and speed, when your immune system's primed to fend off invaders, those things are all coordinated by this symphony of clocks that I discuss in the book. And as I also point out, unfortunately, modern life has really kind of made a mess of those clocks. So it's really easy for them to fall out of sync from each other and from the sun when you spend 90% or more of your time indoors, as we do on average. And when you eat late at night, when you travel across time zones or turn your clock forward or back twice a year for daylight savings time, all these things are making a mess of our clocks. And scientists are more and more linking that circadian disruption to reduce productivity. Obviously, lack of sleep, that's probably the first thing people think of when they hear circadian rhythms. It's being linked to mood disorders, as well as a whole host of health conditions, from diabetes to some potentially some cancers to Alzheimer's. So this literature is just growing pretty rapidly. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that these little, invisible microscopic clocks in our body, that's metaphor, of course, are being linked to that. But as I also emphasize in the book, there are some simple solutions as individuals and as a society that we can implement to reclaim those lost rhythms and, live healthier and happier. So, well, there's some low-hanging fruit that I touch on, and these are really easily implementable things. So the first is creating more contrast in our lives. So that's just getting outside in the morning, seeing more light during the day, in particular in the morning, but being close to a window, like I'm fortunate to be most of the day, and having darker nights. So that's turning down the lights at night. I don't know if you can see, I've got like these electric candles that I fill my apartment with and turn on at night. And it's kind of cozy, but that helps set the rhythms, right? And helps tell your body, this is day, this is night. These are different things. We should be preparing to do different things. And then the second is constricting the hours in which you eat. So that's one thing, a lot of pretty fascinating research is emerging on what's called time-restricted eating. And it stems from this idea that our ancestors, they probably weren't eating at midnight. It wasn't safe to be up and hunting and eating in the middle of the night. But yet, it's easy for us, right? We got refrigerators and microwaves, and restaurants are open really late. So constricting the hours that you eat. As one scientist pointed out to me, 10 hours is pretty ideal. It's more doable than 6 or 8, which some circadian scientists I talk to actually do. And there's potentially extra benefits to that, but tightening that window. And then consistency. So that is eating, sleeping, exercising at the same times every day. So that helps keep your body in tune and knowing what to expect at what hours. So those are the low-hanging fruit that the science is really building towards. And then there's the kind of extension of that is like taking this new science and not only trying to reclaim our rhythms, but like kind of enhancing them. Like with circadian medicine, we are finding that the time of day that you take drugs, get chemotherapy, go in for surgery, can have a profound impact on how effective it is and maybe how much, the extent of the side effects. So there's, a huge range of research really getting started. Not a whole lot of clinical trials that have looked at this so far, but some are now beginning, and it's pretty exciting area. I found an Airbnb that this guy in Arkansas had converted a Cold War era bunker. So the missile silo of this bunker that held a nuclear missile, he had converted that into an Airbnb. And this, 50 feet below ground, cut off from all daylight, sound, everything. And I figured if I could put myself in an environment without any cues of the time of day, so no access to the sun, no access to other people, no access to any clocks, then maybe I could get just a sense for my own rhythms and have that to kind of go forward in the book, thinking about how how wrecking our clocks in a similar way as jet lag does to us on occasion really manifests. So I mean, I wasn't the first to do this. There's been lots of real experiments and more hardcore science, but I did strap on a bunch of devices. I had temperature sensors, I had a Fitbit and a Garmin and an Oura ring and things measuring my temperature, heart rate, sleep. I had a glucose monitor. I was sort of sillily covered in devices for 10 nights and living under dim red light, which doesn't affect your rhythms like other wavelengths of light will. And I was curious to see what would happen. And sure enough, my clocks weren't happy. They fell out of sync. I felt like, just a severe case of jet lag starting midway through the experiment, kind of continuing on for a few days after I got out of the bunker as well. I got to speak with a NASA astronaut who, so that comes in the final chapter where I'm kind of thinking about, let's go forward here. What's our future look like? And NASA's really interested in the potential of humans living elsewhere, right, on other planets. So he gave me some perspective about how that would work and more emphasis on how important it really is actually to sustain our own planet. And that's where circadian science is touching on both of those. So if we were thinking about ever living on Mars, for example, the day length on Mars is different. Our clocks evolved to tick around 24 hours a day. And it's not precise, but near that. So that's why we need to keep sync to the sun. That's why we need to see it to keep it in tune to that actual 24 hours. On Mars, it's a different day length. There's also different wavelengths of light. So there's more red than blue, which, as I mentioned, red doesn't do a whole lot for circadian rhythms. So we'd have to add and supplement and do all kinds of crazy things to make life at all even possible. And let's be real, like, do we really want to live on this red, dusty planet? Anyway, so I talked to him quite a bit about the perspective he had from being up in space, looking down at Earth. You think about those first images, that inspired Earth Day, and talked about how we can apply also that circadian science here to try to sustain our planet. And pretty awesome research in agriculture, working to grow more food with less water and less chemicals, potentially by tweaking the clocks of plants, or just timing applications of things like water and Roundup and these things at certain times of day. You need less of it to have an effect. And you can think about all the downstream implications of that. So it's wide-ranging applications of circadian science that I had no idea about going in. But I met with a researcher in Cambridge, England, who was doing a lot of this research on plants and working with both folks, on big farms as well as indoor agriculture, which is growing. And you can really manipulate the lights and the wavelengths in that kind of a setting, obviously, which is showing a lot of promise as well.